Hi everyone, welcome to Cyber Witch, your online resource for spiritual development. My name is Orly. I have been studying the occult and working professionally as a psychic for almost 20 years. I'm a Gnostic bishop and I'm also training as a yoga teacher. So I have a lot of things to help you learn about to become spiritually stronger. So please hit like and subscribe to my channel for new videos every week. Today, we are talking about witchcraft, karmic cycles, and archonic trauma. This is going to be one of those videos that will affect some people in pretty interesting ways. Like, for sure, some people are probably going to be upset at the things that I say in this video, while others, I think, are going to have some gems of information given to you that will honestly change your life forever. So, in Gnosticism, archons are malevolent supernatural beings that were created by the false god who rules the material world, that is the demiurge. And so they're often depicted as these cosmic rulers or gatekeepers that enforce the demiurge's will. And they trap human souls in the physical realm, preventing their ascent to the divine realm, keeping people trapped in these cycles again and again. And this is a concept that applies to what we experience in this reality, because we are in a spiritual war every single day against forces that people can't necessarily see or sense. And this is something that affects all humans on Earth. So essentially, when you are exhibiting certain emotions, it becomes like food for these entities. And this is why humans are triggered to behave in particular ways. And these triggers and ways that we behave form patterns over time that ultimately affect our karmas, affect our life, and also affects what happens to us outside of linear time and outside of this life by creating and programming these imprinted patterns that are essentially caused by emotions, and then people following that emotion that's not even necessarily from you, from your true will, from your real, genuine experience of reality, from your real source of understanding, but is falsely implanted in your reality to make you feel a certain way and behave a certain way. And then when you react, they feed off of that energy. And so the archons represent forces of ignorance, oppression, and also spiritual blindness, and manipulate humanity to maintain control over the material cosmos. So in Gnosticism, their influence is seen as a barrier to achieving gnosis and the liberating knowledge of the true divine source that we have access to. So all these forces basically cause us to live life in certain ways, to stray from the truth, to stray from our connection to the divine. And when this happens, people don't have the ability to experience life in their greatest potential and essentially become a slave to these mind patterns. And this becomes stronger and stronger over time. And this is essentially a battle. And this battle is very comparable to what it says in the Bhagavad Gita, where our life and our mind are a spiritual battle against our senses, where our senses in the material help to maintain the illusions of Maya and also form these patterns over time that control us and form our karmas outside of our ultimate higher selves understanding things. And so, what happens to people who live their lives that are influenced by archonic forces? And this can result in so many things, right? Like any type of extreme emotion that's causing people to live life in a way that's not benefiting them and affects the world around them in a negative way is generating emotions. It can be things that are related to violence. It can be anger. It could be related to lust. It can be sadness. It can be laziness, just draining your energy. All of these things are fed off of by forces that are outside of people's control. And they will cause things to happen in your life that makes it easier for you to want to exhibit those emotions and feelings. And this affects people all the time. And it affects spiritual people as well. So people that are not in tune with their psychic senses might not be aware that they're feeling compelled to exhibit emotions that aren't to their benefit from some force outside of their control. But spiritual people might be able to feel and sense this. And even if you are working really hard to build your spiritual power and strength and studying clairvoyancy and training in all these ways, these forces are always going to affect you because we are here in this world and it's always going to be a battle. So we have to get used to training for that. And this is also why I speak so much on this channel about the different limbs of yoga, which were all designed to help us to escape suffering. And I'll get more into that later in this video. So when people's lives are controlled by archonic forces, they essentially get trapped in patterns of behavior that over and over again end up ruining that person's life. And they might even be a really spiritual person that gets trapped in this karmic cycle because a lot of people aren't aware that their spiritual practice is being caused by emotional compulsions from these forces. So that gets pretty deep in thinking about it. Like, are you in control over what you're actually doing spiritually? Or is it being compelled by these lower emotional forces that are just enabling those same kind of patterns that end up creating a life that isn't the life that you want because it just doesn't end up working ultimately. Yet, for some reason, people will find themselves repeating these things over and over again, expecting for it to change or expecting that, maybe if they put more power or effort into what they're doing, it's suddenly going to make a difference when it doesn't. And this is because they're being fed on from the energy from that. And so when this happens to people, be it spiritually inspired or just someone that is completely triggered by emotions and lives life according to that way, their life will fall apart and it gets in the way of them being able to evolve in their life outside of linear time. And this is because our life is composed of patterns that in Vedic scriptures are known as kleshas, and the kleshas are things we adapt into ourselves to relieve ourselves from suffering. And there's many different causes from them. They can be caused by the fact that our mind is always in flux and changing. Life's patterns of energy are changing. It can be caused from things as simple as an aversion to wanting pain or harm to come to yourself, or even an aversion to losing things that are precious to you. All of these things are what people are compelled to do to relieve their suffering. And so these create patterns when we act on these behaviors, and those patterns form our karmas outside of linear time and also our future incarnations, which is something that it states in the Yoga Sutras. So we create new patterns through the limbs of yoga, through meditation, through studying sacred scriptures, through breath work, through asanas, through all the different aspects of taking an understanding to the process of your mind and the actions that you take in the world from a deeper level, not from a reactionary level, because that creates these new patterns and that actually does change your life in a positive way. But that's not what the archons want for people. They want people to be forming patterns from their reactions to things. They can just keep feeding off of people's behavior that creates their food. So this is really helpful for people to understand, especially with all the stress that we go through from the world. So this takes me to one of my final points today, which is the strange mentality that the world has toward trauma, which is based on the theories from Freud, instead of holding the opinions of others of his time in similar regard. So if we look at the concept of trauma, according to Freud, it's basically like what contemporary people say trauma is, where you have these experiences and then it's supposed to basically like shape who you are and control your life and dictate how you react to things. And it's something that people have to work through for their whole life. And it's this thing that can basically destroy you. And when you look at it from his contemporary, Adler, trauma is seen in a different lens. It's seen as something where we actually can, through our control over our own mental patterns and control over our behavior, can adjust and change how these horrible experiences, these traumas, affect who we are and affect our state of mind and well-being, and are a way of basically unlocking a secret to happiness. But that's not what the modern world views trauma as. And so it's really strange how we basically have one person's opinion that has kind of taken over what people have just decided it means. So that's something that I think is quite freeing to people, to understand that we can change patterns. That's what the limbs of yoga are designed to do. So this brings me to our final question, which is your spiritual practice trauma-based or is it ascension-based? Think about what you are doing and maybe decipher that if things are not working for you, perhaps it's because there are other things that are going on outside of what is in your immediate understanding of what you should be doing, and change your perspective on your craft, on your spiritual practice, to it being focused on things that are ultimately helping you evolve and not on reactions to emotions and trauma that's not ultimately to your own benefit, but something that is, once again, feeding things that just want to keep you in a cycle of oppression and control by your emotions. It doesn't mean that having emotions are bad, of course. Emotions can be a really beautiful thing, and obviously I love feeling good and happy and passionate about the stuff that I care about in my life. But it's also important that, once I was saying earlier in the video, all these things are things that can relate to our suffering, because our attachment to even the things we love makes us suffer because we don't want those things to ever leave us. So it's really important to not have your life in control by things that are just a constant survival mode, a constant aversion to suffering, but to really focus on your ascension and your spiritual growth and evolution, because through the limbs of yoga, that does relieve you from that. And so I hope that this video gave you some things to think about. If you would like to reach me for any of my spiritual services, my tarot readings, or my online classes, all those things are linked in the description of this video as a resource for you. Please do hit like and subscribe to help my channel grow, and share the videos with anyone you think would benefit from them. And I'll see you next time. Bye.